開會係請團同政府代表入嚟啊，唔該。
Should the administration and deputation in, please?
OK 啦。坐晒後邊。今日第一排冇人坐。佢哋唔肯坐。因為佢哋其實想4個。OK， 明白。好，各位同事，我哋今日。
All right, members. The main item for today is rights of refugee and asylum seeker children. The administration's paper is entitled Non-Refoulement Claims who are minors in Hong Kong. I'd like to welcome a lot of deputations, individuals and government departments to this meeting. Let me introduce the administration. We have the Education Bureau, Security Bureau, Department of Health, Immigration Department, Leisure and Cultural Services Department, Social Welfare Department, and Hospital Authority. With regard to children's rights, we have so many departments with us, and let's hope that we can spend this morning having a look at the non-refoulement claimants and asylum seekers who are minors and their situation here in Hong Kong. I'd like to welcome all the deputations being with us. This is how we're going to proceed. I'll invite the deputations to take the floor and speak first. What you're going to say will not be protected by the powers and privileges ordinance. You will be held responsible for your own remarks. Now, for interpretation, please put on the earpiece.
The earphone and channel 2 is for English. 英文就
for English, it is channel number 2. Now, for the minors of asylum seekers and non-refoulement claimants, there are 800 and also in Hong Kong. Some of them are awaiting appeal, some are awaiting removal, and altogether 800 of them or more. Now, through the Security Bureau and the Social Welfare Department, the ISS-HK is providing the services to them. We have invited ISS-HK, but they declined our invitation. We have received from the EOC written submissions, and they are talking about the receipt of complaints there are 10 minors who don't have any education, and they've been waiting for anything between 4 and 15 months and still cannot be placed in schools for education. And this is something of concern to us. You might wish to have a look at the EOC submission if you have the time. Unfortunately, EOC cannot be with us this morning. I hope that the Education Bureau and indeed the administration, after listening to the deputations, would be kind enough to make a response to the EOC paper. I'd like to turn to the deputations, 3 minutes each. Please maximize your time. I understand that some individuals and some deputations, for security reasons, are not prepared to disclose their identity. I fully understand that this is about the asylum seekers and refugees in Hong Kong. They do face persecution in their place of origin. And I do appreciate the protection of their identity. I fully appreciate that some of them are turning up in person to tell us what's happening to them in Hong Kong. All right, let's get started. First of all, I'd like to invite Mr. Hong from the Civic Party. Good morning, Chairman. I'd like to say that it is a shame to see all these faces across from us. Sitting right in front of us are the Security Bureau officials. Now we're dealing with refugees and rights of the refugees and asylum seeker children. Why is it that the Security Bureau is taking the lead? Why do they have to block these children? In fact, under the CRC in 1994, it was applied to Hong Kong. Article 22 provides that refugee children should be given protection and support. In 1951, the Refugee Convention was enacted and hasn't been applied to Hong Kong. So in Hong Kong, we're not providing any asylum, or we're not accepting any refugees in Hong Kong. And I mean, the treatment that they're getting is different from what they are supposed to get. Education is something that children are supposed to get, but in Hong Kong, these minors do experience difficulties. The administration said that the Education Bureau will look at different cases and deal with these minors under 18 on a case-by-case basis, and they would have discretion. They would exercise their discretion. This is not a fundamental right. In 2016-17, there were some reports that some minors are rejected by some schools because they are on reconnaissance papers, and in a way they are having their right to education being deprived of. These children, even if they are accepted, they will be given fee assistance in a particular way, and the parents will have to front up the fees, and the school uniforms will not be included in the subsidy. That these asylum seekers, they cannot work. They're getting really a pitiful amount of subsidy, and the government is causing difficulties to the children. The language barrier is another barrier to social development. The government may arrange them to study in the non-Cantonese speaking schools, but they may not necessarily speak English. So there is no support for the social development in schools. Now, given the small amount of subsidies, they cannot take part in extracurricular activities, and this is detrimental to their development. The Second Party feels that since Article 1 of the CRC provides that children are referred to anybody under the age of 18. Now, for these asylum seeker children, the government should treat them as children in Hong Kong on a parity treatment. I hope that in the long run, the Refugee Convention should be brought into Hong Kong so that the refugee children would enjoy the same right as some children anywhere.
Mr. Thomas Zawada.
Good morning. My name is Tomasz Zawada and I represent Pathfinders. From inception in 2007 to date, we have helped over 4,600 babies, children and their migrant mothers in Hong Kong. In 2016, 52% of Pathfinders' Indonesian clients had pending non-refoulement claims under a unified screening mechanism. USM. They seek asylum for themselves and their children, mainly because they are scared of the social stigmatization and discrimination they might face back in Indonesia, a deeply conservative country, for being a single mother with a mixed-race child. In Pathfinder's experience, refugee children face a myriad of problems and difficulties from the day they are born. These range from obtaining their birth certificates to going to schools to seeing a doctor. Pathfinders is currently involved in a case concerning a former foreign domestic worker, her boyfriend, and their Hong Kong-born baby girl. Parents come from different countries and are both USM claimants. Both parents are drug users. Consequently, the baby was born with serious developmental defects. She requires close care and a long-term plan for her future, and yet both parents are absent and incapable of caring for her. The baby's immigration status is highly determinative of what will happen to her. However, her immigration status is attached to that of her parents. She does not have an independent USM claim or representation in respect of it. The baby languishes in institutional care. No permanency plan has been made. In effect, the baby will remain in care until the parent's claims is determined, and yet there is no timeline or on how long that may take. In Pathfinder's experience, the solution implemented by the authorities in such cases is to deport the baby to a country she does not know, to live with people she has never met, in foreign language and culture, and in a place where the social and medical facilities and support she desperately needs are likely available. We make 5 recommendations. 1. Assess children's USM claims in their own right, independent and unattached to the claims of their parents, with independent advice and representation. 2. Make the welfare of the child the paramount consideration when assessing their USM claims. 3. Lower the cost and increase the efficiency of birth certificate applications for USM claimant children in compliance with UN guidelines. 4. Improve access to education for USM claimant children and expand the education-related funding available to them. And 5. Make it easier for USM claimant children to access general outpatient care services at hospitals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zawada. 跟住我哋請 Justice Centre 嘅李。
Next, I would like to invite Ms. Lee from Justice Center. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for holding this meeting. I would like to thank the appropriate officers for attending the meeting. Justice Center is a place to help the refugees. We advocate for them and will provide legal service and other services. Refugee children, like other children, should be protected under the Convention for the Protection of Children, that is the Convention on Rights of the Child, as well as other rights. But then only 0.7% of the USM claims have been accepted. Now, in fact, for the UN Committee Against Torture, the high threshold imposed by the Hong Kong government has been remarked upon. Well, for such a threshold that is so high, it means that children that are subject to cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or torture will stand at risk. This is against Article 6 of the CRC, which guarantees or which advocates the survival and development of the child. We believe that the threshold is too high, and then for the USM claims, we haven't got a child-centered policy. For the paper prepared for this meeting, children's claims would be lumped together with their parents' claims. But then there isn't an adequate chance for the child to make their case known. So the children may not be able to put forward rationale or justification different from that of their parents. Now, we have immigration officers here and security bureau officials here. Are you going to revise the policies so that when you deal with the cases, you will take care of the needs? And can you sort of enhance your officers' views concerning their sensitivity towards issues like the female genital mutilation? And then there is this idea that there should be detention of the USM claimants. Now, among the USM claim children, they have been traumatized, and there has been a study to say that a detention camp would only mean that children would find difficult to recover from the trauma. An Australian study has also talked about the much higher ratio of trauma suffered by such children when compared with other children. Recently, there was a 19-year-old teenager from Yemen who said that should he be locked up in a detention camp, he would rather jump into the Victoria Harbour to commit suicide. I hope you will accept the UC's advice, that is, the race discrimination ordinance should be amended. No one should be discriminated on the ground of his or her refugee status. The UC cannot attend today's meeting, but I'm sure the UC would continue to advocate on behalf of the refugee children in relation to equal opportunities.
Azan Marwa.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Azan Marwa. I am a practicing barrister and published author specializing in children's rights. I would first like to thank the subcommittee for holding this meeting to consider this subject. Hong Kong has been rightly criticized for failing to fully protect refugee children, and the subcommittee is to be praised for taking steps to raise this issue with the administration. I would like to just take a moment to say that there was a time when Hong Kong children were being placed in detention camps by the Japanese here in Hong Kong or made into refugees. This issue is not about immigration, it's not about being a refugee, it's about children and basic humanity and dignity. Secondly, I would like to thank my fellow child welfare professionals here today, giving evidence. I have read and heartily commend their valuable submissions to the subcommittee. I have also read the paper submitted by the administration, and I would like to make some preliminary remarks about it. There is no mention within the paper of the words human rights or children's rights or discrimination within the substance of the paper. There is no mention of any investigation or attempts to ascertain the problems faced by refugee children whatsoever. The focus of the paper instead appears to be the immigration-related screening mechanisms for children. This is a mistake. It is obvious that from the paper that the administration has not taken a rights-based approach to the issues faced by refugee children. There is no attempt to address the published criticisms made by international human rights experts against the problems faced by refugee children. Instead, there is talk about basic needs being met by ISS contributions and by the discretion to provide extra benefits in special cases. This is regrettable because children are not special cases. From the papers submitted, there are more than 850 of them. They are no longer a special case. It is a substantial problem that needs root and branch reform. In this regard, I commend the Chief Executive for her promise to create a Children's Commission. But given the approach taken by the administration in its paper, I suggest that this underscores the need for an independent commission. The administration cannot claim that it has not dealt with these problems because they were unaware of these criticisms. More than a decade ago, over the last decade, several United Nations expert panels, including the Committee on Children's Rights, the Committee Against Torture, and the Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, have made specific criticisms relating to treatment of refugee children in Hong Kong. Neither can the administration claim that it has taken sufficient measures to provide for their welfare or protection. The Equal Opportunities Commission, as well as the NGOs and social welfare organizations present today, have reported clearly the ongoing breaches of human and children's rights faced by refugee children. These problems extend to discrimination, education, early childhood development, basic needs, and medical care. Each of these deputations has made specific recommendations, many of which would require only administrative measures. In this regard, I would ask those administration members present today to read the collective written submission, which was, I think, only lately submitted, wherein we detail specific requests. I ask the administration to address these specific problems and make commitments to implement the recommendations. I ask the subcommittee and LegCo to hold the administration to account, in particular to the manifesto commitments to protect children's rights. Thank you for your time and attention.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Marwa.
Just now, Mr. Marwa talked about a paper. In fact, it was co-signed and submitted by himself and other organizations. We have already received the submission, and it will be uploaded to our website.
Vinny Aiwani.
Sorry. 多謝主席。
Thank you, Chair. We are from the Lions Rock Institute. We have been hearing about requests to increase resources here and there. We differ from them. We just ask for the administration to provide an identity card to the refugee children so that they will be regarded as part of the Hong Kong community. Well, we recommend that we should give them an ID card because the mural of Hong Kong was built by refugees. And so how can we help the illegal immigrants? I'm a Hong Konger, I'm a female, I'm a Hong Kong girl, so it is right for me to air our views. Our director asked me about my identity. I said that I'm Hong Konger. This is because I took the TSA at primary school, and I took DSE, and then I went to university. So TSA and DSE has formed my identity. Many people have said that TSA and DSE are meaningless. Parents do not like their children, do not want the children to take TSE or DSE, because just like a boy giving flowers or giving a ring to his girlfriend to make a proposal, you would say that it's meaningless. But I don't think so. So I think all the refugee children should take the DSE subjects in Chinese, English, and Chinese history. And then when they pass the subjects, they were given the status. If they stay here for 7 years without breaking the law, then they should be given an ID card. Chair, I'm talking about a few hundred children only, just a few hundred. Can anybody deny that the TSA and the DSE are not part of our collective memory? Has anybody not taken part in this absurd DSE and TSA examinations? With that imprinted on us, we will say that we are Hong Kongers. So please give them an opportunity to stay in Hong Kong.
跟住我哋請醫護行者嘅劉海。
Next, Ms. Lau from Health in Action. Thank you, Chair. For a long time, we have been concerned about the health of refugees, in particular refugee children, and we have been providing an appropriate amount of help. So we want to talk about 3 health-related topics, and we'd like to share our observations with you, and we want to make some recommendations. We hope that the HA and the DOH will listen to us. First of all, refugee children should be given appointments at the HA clinics regularly. Sometimes they have the need. If they need to travel to the HA to see a doctor, in fact, it is a burden because there is an additional grants from the ISS to cover the journey or to cover the fees. And every time they have to get a medical waiver. Currently, it is just a one-off document. In other words, every time a child has to go to see a doctor, he has to get sick leave to skip school, and then he has to get a medical waiver. In other words, it is a big burden on both the parent and the children. I just wonder if the ISS can do the following. For those requiring regular reappointments, please give them a transport subsidy. Can the HA or the DOH consider providing a longer-term medical waiver covering 6 months or 12 months instead of a one-off medical waiver? Another point is about the special medical needs of children, say, for example, eyeglasses and also dental care. Currently, the DH does provide dental care to students under the Student Health Service, and also eye checkups have been provided, but then you don't get any subsidies for purchasing eyeglasses. And then for dental care, now you get dental care when you are with the primary schools. But then for secondary school students, no, you don't get it. And then, in fact, we have got a secondary school child who has a severe dental problem that he can't attend school. And we haven't got public dental care at all. You may say there is, but then that's for emergency, for first aid, and then for extraction of one tooth only. And you need to get up early to queue for a quota. I wondered if you can borrow some ideas from the CSSA, which is called medical and rehabilitation grants, so that the refugee children can be given dental care and can be given money to buy eyeglasses. And then for the frontline staff at the public hospitals, I think it's a matter of their awareness. When we have refugee children attending the clinics, they will be told that they are NUP non-eligible and they have to go to private clinics, but then they can't afford it because they can't work. So perhaps it's a matter of lack of sensitivity on the part of frontline officers, or they are not aware of the policies covering refugee children. I think we need cultural sensitivity as well, like the FGM, that is the female genital mutilation. Frontline officers may not be aware of it, but then the pregnant refugee women or the refugee children may have special needs as a result of such cultural differences. So I hope the frontline staff will be made aware of such sensitivities. Thank you.
Hi,
Ms. Chen Yan, Save the Children. Good morning, Chairman, government officials. Save the Children is like a global family. We cover 120 countries. We're providing services there in Thailand, Yemen, European countries, Italy, Jordan. We are providing refugee services. Here in Hong Kong, we don't serve the refugees direct, but we are working with Christian Action and Pathfinder. And at Pathfinder, we have supported a health program for those who fail to get medical waiver, and also for the pregnant women to get medical care. Now, and also for 0 and 3 children, 0 and 3, we are trying to provide them with stimulating exercises to spur their development. The children's rights apply to all children. They are not. They should not be regarded as charity. All children, doesn't matter what their color skin, their creed, their faith are, they should not be treated differently. And because of the parents' religion, they should not be discriminated against. So when they are in Hong Kong, we are concerned by a couple of things. The first one is infant between 0 to 2. Children in Hong Kong are different from refugees elsewhere. There are 60 million refugees all over the world. In Hong Kong, half. We have 800 of them are refugee children. And the difference is they are not coming to Hong Kong because of warfare. They come to Hong Kong with their identity document, with passport, but they are subject to discrimination, subject to persecution in their home country. They are subject to inhumane treatment, and that's why they find themselves in Hong Kong in order to improve their lot. Then when they come to Hong Kong, they do need to wait some time before they can apply for non-refoulement. An Egyptian person, for instance, he can stay in Hong Kong for 3 months. Now, unless he's an overstayer, he cannot be subsumed under the non-refoulement claims. So the government should consider whether there should be a review on the non-refoulement claim mechanism. In 2014, the government has introduced the USM. That is a step in the right direction. In terms of education, they have to wait a couple of days after they put in the application, and they need to have the welfare of the ISS HK before they can make an application for the waiver at the Education Bureau. This is a long time. It takes 6 months to a year before they can be placed in schools. I hope that once the children have put in their non-refoulement claims, they should be allowed to put in the application for education, and they should be informed of the availability of such services, and they don't have to run around for different services. Thanks very much. Madam Chen, Hong Kong Society for Asylum Seekers and Refugees, Madam Choi. Chairman, thank you. I've been working as a volunteer for the refugees for some time. I've been in touch with many claimants and refugee children. Now the government has given the children, refugee children, a short shrift. Now let me share with you a story. A 4-year-old girl, Maria, Pakistani father and Indonesian mother, and they have a very close-knit family. Her father always says, Maria is my heart. Now her father is subject to judicial review, and her mother's case is under process. Now her father is likely to be repatriated to Pakistan, and her mother is likely to be raising 3 children, and they're likely to be repatriated to Indonesia. Now there is a need for the clan's agreement if they are to enjoy the proper status. If her mother didn't get the recognition, she's likely to sell her children, 3 children, and this is going to be traumatic for the kids, that they are going to be repatriated to this kind of trauma. I think the government should consider their plight instead of sitting idly by. Another story, a single parent giving birth to a twin. The twins were born in the Philippines. Now, if they stay in the Philippines, these twins are likely to be sold or murdered. In order to protect the 2 sons, the mother came to Hong Kong. They've spent 2 years in Hong Kong. The kids are 3 years old. They cannot talk, and we're arranging for some assessment, and they cannot rely on the ISS for assistance because they are only providing the fundamental care. It is hard for them to seek any help. Luckily, they are our members, and through some private connection, we arranged for some examination. The brother is suffering from language delay problem, and the younger brother is suffering from autism. We have made referrals. Now, in the process of assessment, it was a very circuitous route. Now, if they are placed in special schools, there would be another hurdle, because special schools in Hong Kong teach in Cantonese, and there are so many refugee children who are facing similar plights, and that children's experience would affect their whole life. They're supposed to be innocent in this international city like Hong Kong. They are not able to get their fundamental rights. Shouldn't the government do something to help them? Also, there are some single parent families whose children are permanent Hong Kong residents. And for the mothers to apply to stay in Hong Kong, some of them have been waiting for 3 years. For these new immigrants, they would need about 1.5 years. Is the government discriminating against the non-ethnic Chinese? The government keeps saying that they would expedite the process, but their decision will make a difference between whether they have family union or family separation. And these children are likely to face all kinds of danger. Every child should be entitled their right. Should the government become such a callous player in dealing with these applications? The government should be rational and should be humanitarian, and should have a human touch in dealing with these people instead of just chucking them out of Hong Kong. All right, thanks very much. Ms. Isabella Ng. Thank you, Chairman. I'm here on behalf of myself and also a school principal. She cannot make it here today, but she wrote something for me to articulate. Now, when the refugee children are making application to be placed in schools. It would be very hard for them. They can't find school places. It's hard for them to get the application form to start with because the schools can't be bothered if they know that they are refugees. Kindergartens are self-financing, and if the children are using the coupon, it is subsidized by the government. It will be easier. But the refugee children are dealt with by the student finance section, and they are not welcome. Many parents in schools do not welcome the refugees either. In September, the government has introduced the quality kindergarten education, or 15 free education. Basically, the subsidy is on the basis of head count, and the schools not want to increase the expenditure to serve these refugee minors. Now, this is what I get from Principal Lui, who cannot make it today. I am teaching at Hong Kong U at the Asia Pacific Studies. I am wearing my two hats. I'm also here with some of the victims. Many times we would tell the immigration department to get on with the cases and not let them stranded. I'm grateful to the immigration department for doing something, but we identified some problems here. Now, because of the haste in which they deal with the cases, a lot of the cases were rejected and appealed. Now, many mothers came running to us expressing fear, and that the couples may be coming from different countries, and they're making applications separately, and they're raising 1 to 3 kids between these for these families. Now, in some cases, we've heard from them that they have to give away their children because their family members don't accept them. Now, what's happening to these kids? It's not hard to imagine. It would be lucky if they can get a good family. If they're unlucky, they would be part of the victims of human trafficking. Now, under these circumstances, we have 600 children who are claimants. These children were born and brought up here in Hong Kong. They receive education here in Hong Kong. They can become future pillars in Hong Kong. Why did they have to suffer this discrimination? Why can't we offer them some status? Policy is formulated by the government. The policy makers can revise and amend the policies in light of circumstances. We don't have the right mix of population. The younger segment of the population is declining in size. So why can't we allow these children who were born and brought up in Hong Kong to be given a chance to serve us in Hong Kong? All right, thanks very much, Isabella. Ms. Joey Yu, Chairman. I'm also a volunteer of a refugee organization. Now, the previous speakers mentioned the plights of the refugee children. I think we can make some recommendations in terms of accommodation. These are refugees and they cannot work. They're not supposed to work. Now, this is a fact of life. Are you aware that the rents in Hong Kong are really enormously high? It's beyond their affordability. Now, a small subdivided unit will cost them $4,000 or $5,000, and the accommodation subsidy it is only $1,500 and $750. Now, for these refugees next to me, how can they afford the subdivided units in Hong Kong? It's not just $4,000 all the way. The owners are likely to put up the rent, and they have to move out and look for alternative accommodation. A week or so ago, she told me that she had to move, and she had to. I mean, it's impossible for her to find anywhere which is $2,000. Now, luckily, she got the support of the religious organization and ourselves, should manage to find somewhere to live, and this is really detrimental to them. So I hope that the administration would increase some flexibility in the accommodation allowance. Now, this is not money that will go into their pocket. This money would go to the owners. I think there should be some flexibility to ensure that they would have a roof over their head. The other thing is about education. Isabella mentioned that this a moment ago. These children should be incorporated into the 15 free education system, and therefore the kindergartens would be able to cater for these refugee children, for them to have a decent education. Other than school fees, books and stationaries would also be a problem. A P1 kid, these, we cost them $2,000-3,000. They don't have any salaries. How can they afford these amounts of money? I think the government can disperse the funding to the schools to pay for the expenditure for books and so on, and that way they would enjoy their right. It would be hard for them to find schools in the first place. Even if they get placed, the parents, they cannot afford the deposits, particular kindergartens, they cannot afford upfront deposits, and the kids will be delayed. A 5-year-old can be in K1, and this is detrimental to their development. We are also concerned about kids with special needs. The government should allocate more resources for them. In special schools, there should be teaching in English, and that way they would be able to develop their linguistic ability and so on.
Thank you. Next, I would like to invite the child sitting next to you to speak. She's called Jennifer. She can speak on her own behalf.
Hello, my name is Jenny.
I'm called Jennifer. Hi. Today I come here to speak. I'm 5 years old and 5 months. I go to school. I go to kindergarten. I live in Lok Fu. I like to live in Hong Kong. I have many friends here. A lot of aunties are here. My family is also here. I like to go to school. It's a lot of fun going to school. I can dance at school. I can sing. When I go to school, I can do that. When I grow up, I would like to become a doctor. Thank you. So, Jennifer, have you finished? I can't see you. Maybe our facilities aren't children-oriented. Thank you. Maybe next time when we have our meetings, we need to replace the chairs. Next, would the mother be addressing us? Yes, please. I'm Yusna. I've been in Hong Kong for many years. I've just moved house. It was a very difficult experience for me. We were given 9 days to look for accommodation. We were at a loss. So it was really, really difficult to get accommodation. We looked for a flat for 5 days. Even when $3,000 were asked for, it was a very small unit. and there wasn't even a bed in the unit. So how can we expect us to live in a $3,000 unit? I asked for a reduction. I asked for $2,000 instead of $3,000, and the request was rejected. And then I have to pay more if I need a bed in the room. And then $4,500 was the asking price for a unit in Tin Shui Wai. I can't afford it. And then I tried to share the accommodation with a friend. I have to pay $2,200 by way of commission. Where can I get the money? I can't work. I'm not allowed to go to work. And I was advised to get a loan from my friend. But how can I repay my friend? And then I was simply asked to look for a solution. I tried to find help from an officer. And again, the advice was to get a loan from a friend. I said, yes, I can get money from a friend, but how can I repay the loan? And then the officer said that the landlord said that I should leave the flat whether I got accommodation or not. I was given 9 days to find a flat. We don't want to leave, but we were urged to go away as quickly as possible. All right, have you finished? All right, thank you. Thank you. Next, my child is studying in Hong Kong. I don't want to take her back to Indonesia. I would like her to stay in Hong Kong for schooling. Others have always praised her for being clever. The teacher has said that she's smart, and the teacher has asked me to take good care of her because she's so smart. And the teacher has said that if I can afford it, I should give her tuition on all sorts of things. She likes dancing, singing. And then the teacher has also said that I should give her tuition classes in Chinese, English, etc. Thank you. We can see that your daughter is very smart. Maybe in a moment our public officers will give a reply, see if they can help. If we go back to Indonesia, we can't afford any schooling for her there. I don't have parents in Indonesia. I don't have a husband in Indonesia who can work to make an income to afford her schooling. I have to stay here. I want her to stay here for her schooling. Thank you. Your message has been heard. We have to give the floor to the next deputation. Next, Mr. Low from the Hong Kong Pediatric Foundation. Thank you. I'm the health ambassador from the Hong Kong PF. Ours is a non-profit making professional body set up in 1994. We fight for the interests of children and will promote children's health, and we have been holding different activities to promote healthy development of our children. We want to set up a hospital for children. Under the CRC, anybody under the age of 18 will be regarded as a child. When it comes to health, it means psychological health, physical health, social health, etc. And children should all be protected. Hong Kong is a party to the CRC. Refugee children should not be discriminated against simply because they are refugees. And then for children staying in Hong Kong as a refugee, in terms of education and welfare, their needs haven't been taken care of. If you go to see a doctor, the procedures are cumbersome, and every time you need to ask for a medical waiver. With that, you can get an appointment. If you can't get it in time, then you can't have immediate attention by the doctor. So we're suggesting that it should be streamlined. Instead of having a one-off waiver, it should last for 6 months or 12 months, and there should be transparency so that health professionals can understand that the refugee children are entitled to the medical waiver. And then mental health. Now it is important for their emotional well-being that we take care of the mental health. Well, they've been marginalized. Together with their parents, they have been displaced. Now for those who studied the psychology of refugees, well, in fact, refugees may develop severe mental problems as a result of their status. They'll be in fear, they can't sleep, and they may feel unwell. So I think we should enhance the awareness of the mental well-being of refugee children on the part of people helping them. I think social workers and doctors should be able to screen out the high-risk refugee children so that they can be treated and then they can cope with the problems facing them. Now, we have the Student Finance Office. Parents have to pay upfront before they get a reimbursement in 6 months' time in relation to the tuition fees. Parents can't work, so it is a heavy financial burden. And then for social support, we haven't got any social support for them, so it is affecting the development. Well, when children cannot go to school, then it means that they are not able to have social life and there are no friends. Currently, for the USM claimants, yes, we do have some subsidies for them, but it is not adequate, so they can't meet their basic needs. I suggest that the administration should encourage more NGOs to provide more assistance to the refugee children. There should be a platform to help the refugees to develop their skills. Those who are educated should be encouraged to help the refugee children in terms of schooling. I hope you won't overlook the rights of the refugee children here as well as the second-generation refugee children. Irrespective of their background, they should be given a happy childhood. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chow Fu Kin. Thank you. I'm Chow Fu Kin. I'm just an individual. I agree entirely with what Mr. Low has said. I just want to add to what he has said. In terms of medical and health issues, for refugee children to go to public hospitals, the procedures are cumbersome. The time to wait is long. You have to get a medical waiver every time you see a doctor before you can get an appointment. And then the medical waiver is a one-off document only. Refugee children cannot get it in time, and in other words, the child cannot get an appointment within the same day. And then for ISS, for each refugee, the transport subsidy is limited. It is paid on a monthly basis. They have to report to the immigration department as well. Because of the because of the expensive medical expenditure, parents may not take the children to see a doctor. Some frontline medical officers are not aware of the refugee-related policies, thus preventing children from getting proper health care. Some refugee parents may not have adequate medical knowledge. They may think that the fees would be too expensive and they may not be taking the children to see a doctor. So I think we should streamline the medical waivers procedures. The validity period should be 6 to 12 months. There should be an objective and transparent mechanism so that they will get adequate health care. And I think there should be transport coupons to be issued to the parents and the children so as to ease the burden in terms of transport expenditure. And there should be telephone calls to be made by the hospital to check if the children have been taking the medicine regularly. Thank you, Ms. Low. As to the point made by the Hong Kong PF, I support the views. I would also like to comment on the educational needs and the mental health. No one has ever given a very detailed response concerning the mental well-being of the refugee children. Well, they are faced with legal uncertainty. They have to wait for the USM screening, and it takes a long time. As Jennifer's mother has said, they run the risk of being displaced. There is distrust, and as Ms. Ng has said, they have to worry all the time. That is whether they will be separated from their family members. So they are under stress all the time, and they suffer from campus bullying, and they're stigmatized. They don't have a high sense of self-dignity. So they are bothered, and then their well-being will be compromised. And in fact, they suffer from post-trauma problems, and they usually have emotional disorders, and young people may also suffer from this, and they may break the law. The community may have a misunderstanding, thinking that they are violence prone. Therefore, the mental well-being of refugee children is a very important element. It can't be overlooked. Therefore, my recommendations are as follows. There should be social medical services for refugee children. Screen out the high-risk children so that they will be lifted out of their depression, and then they can cope with future challenges more easily. And then the government should provide more help to the self-help groups of the refugees so that they can help each other. Other than subventing their services, I think the government should also set aside land to provide community centers for the refugees so that they have a place to go and they can give vent to their feelings. I think for schools, they should set up small groups to take care of refugee children, and teachers should be trained to discern the problems suffered by the refugee children. And then parents should also know about their refugee children's mental difficulties. Many people have said that education is important, and in fact when they try to get fee reduction, yes, there may be a discretion to reduce the fees. However, first of all, refugee parents have to pay upfront, and they only get the reimbursement in 6 months' time from the Student Finance Office. Yes, their basic needs have been subvented by the government, but then the budget is so tight that they can't afford the lunch, uniforms, textbooks, etc. when the children go to school. The educational environment in Hong Kong is highly competitive. Therefore, the refugee children can easily be outcompeted, and this will give rise to more problems. So there should be discretion so that the student financial assistance can be obtained earlier in advance of the commencement of school year, so the parents don't have to pay upfront. As Ms. Yu has said, perhaps the government can provide a higher level of transport subsidy to the children. There should be a grant for textbooks, for extracurricular activities, and we should promote the idea of selling the textbooks by getting donations. Well, the refugee children are born to suffer from a lot of inequalities. We need to take care of the children, of their education as well as their mental well-being. Otherwise, they will be suffering a lot. They will be under a lot of pressure, and I hope that they won't feel that they are isolated. They are not the marginalized group.
Well, thanks very much. Madam Law, if you have the submission, please make it available to us. Ms. Gansale. Thank you, Chairman. I go along with the HKPF's position. In terms of personal development, children like other refugees would go through different stages of their life, and they do need to have a safe environment for their emotional and social development. And the refugees, children, are facing so many constraints, and they face all manner of problems. The expenditure for the infants, and they are not familiar with the local education and healthcare system. All these would become impediments. At the children and teenager stage, they do face social, physical, and psychological problems, and they are transitioning into adulthood, and if they are growing up in a bad environment, they're likely to be going astray. The refugees cannot work if they choose to work illegally. Their wages, the insurance, that will not be getting any protection. If they get arrested, they're likely to be put behind bars. So I hope that in this competitive knowledge economy, how can they maintain any competitiveness? They can't even afford the tuition, the overseas tours, and so on. Chairman, you said at the beginning that some refugee children are not placed in schools, and in the long term they don't enjoy any social network, and they are isolated. They feel a sense of isolation. They cannot be integrated, and this is detrimental to the development. And these refugee minors cannot fend for themselves, and the parents cannot work and make money. They rely on the government for support, and the government is offering $1,500 for accommodation, and also on a daily basis they get less than $1,600, and they also get support from the voluntary organizations. They simply cannot afford life in Hong Kong. How can they have any confidence and the dignity to face the future? And how can they plan their life going forward and live with any hope? So if the government can allow them to have some channels to get information, that they would not be feeling so frustrated. The government can offer them a channel for help, and also some translators to break the communication gap. The government can also make available to them some pamphlets about their life and the healthcare and so on. So these are talented people. They have the potential. They can become future pillar of our society, and they can be part of. They will not be part of the problem in Hong Kong. In Australia, they have a scheme whereby the refugees with potential can be incorporated into society. They can make together. They can make 100,000 Australian dollars to the country, and the government can give them incentives. In terms of education, there should be more flexibility. Education can change their life, and they can have their well-being well protected.
Thomas France of the Vine Community Service Limited.
Thank you for having us today. First of all, I'd like to recognize what Hong Kong does for the children of asylum seekers. We think that great steps have been made towards giving these children at least a chance in obtaining basic skills in education, and by allowing them to go to primary and secondary schools, we're giving them educational skills that are necessary to survive in the world today. We consider our city to be Asia's world city, a shining example of a developed, culturally diverse, advanced city, prosperous and civilized. And as such, we show off our advanced infrastructure and our well-developed economy. We tout our transparency and rule of law in business dealings. We're an example to the other parts of Asia that are still in the process of developing. One area that can be measured for this development and civilization is how we treat our most vulnerable and marginalized communities. Do we protect them? Do we include them? Do we offer opportunities for them to contribute to the strength of our great city? The children of asylum seekers have not committed any sort of offense or crime. They're not in a position to make any life decisions. They go where their parents take them. They have left the support of their extended families and entered into a new culture. The language and customs are not familiar. Many of them have suffered multiple, potentially traumatic events. Here in Hong Kong, they're forced to live below the poverty level as their parents are not allowed to work. They live life with an extremely insecure future as they have no real sense of a place to belong. We ask the government to recognize that these children face special psychological and social circumstances and to give them the extra support that they need. These children need kindergarten to prepare them for primary school. And while the government voucher is a great start, we are all aware that there are other costs associated with kindergarten. The uniforms, the school supplies, and the transportation to and from school for both the student and the parents, all these costs are insurmountable for children whose parents are not allowed to work. How can we expect a child who has no experience in a classroom, who does not know the language or the culture, who even looks different from the other children, to succeed in a Hong Kong public school system? Let's not set these children up for failure, but let's show what a civilized and developed city Hong Kong is by giving them the support they need to enter the school system. Let's provide the social and psychological support that they need in order to give them a chance in life. Let's provide the tutoring that they need to catch up on language, on social skills, and on the academic subjects in which they're behind. Those children of asylum seekers who have grown up here, let's give them life tools by opening up vocational training and educational opportunities beyond secondary. Let's give them some hope of making a path to residence for those who have been here for sometimes more than a decade. With a goal in mind, these children will exceed our expectations and become valuable assets to our city. It's our desire that Hong Kong continues to be an example to the rest of Asia of what a true world city should look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Franz. Next is Karen McCallan of the Daily and Associates.
Hello. I would like to thank you for this opportunity to address a few points in respect of screening of minor non-refoulement claimants under the USM. Our firm represents non-refoulement claimants, including minors, in the screening process under the USM. And with that as a background, and having read the background prepared by the Security Bureau, Immigration Department, and Social Welfare Department, I would like to raise a few points that we have identified with respect to minor claimants. First of all, minor claimants have different needs than adult claimants. Their capacity to present their claim and give evidence is affected by multiple factors, including age, mental development, gender, their cultural background, and other factors including fear, psychological conditions, and a child's perception of the process. The situation is particularly acute for unaccompanied minors who are without family or their community's support. Hong Kong is bound by its obligations under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which require that in all actions concerning children, the best interests of the child will be taken into account as a primary consideration. This means that the screening procedures under the USM should take into account the best interests of the child, both procedurally and in dealing with evidentiary issues. Procedurally, unaccompanied children should be identified at an early stage and claims dealt with on a high priority basis with early access to legal representation and advice, amongst other matters. Evidentiary matters include identifying the best way to elicit evidence, bearing in mind the mental development of the child's capacity to recall events, the time elapsed since the events occurred, and the capacity of the child to communicate his or her experiences. Questioning should be done in a sensitive manner and in an informal setting. Procedures and guidelines need to be adopted to reflect these factors and to realize a fair process for the screening of minor claimants. And appropriate training in this respect needs also to go hand in hand with developing such procedures. Unfortunately, in our experience, there's a lack of clear policies and procedures for assessing the claims of non-refoulement children, the non-refoulement claims of minors. In addition, we have seen instances separate to the screening procedures but tied in of minor claimants being detained. We would reiterate that this should be an option, or not an option, but a matter of absolute last resort. And it should not be a default position simply because there's a lack of clear policies for dealing with minors through Immigration Department, Social Welfare Department, and ISS. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Karen McClellan. Gentleman in the back.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I am delighted to be here. I am so happy to be sharing with all of you, and thankful for who gave me this opportunity to speak up. I am Himyar from Yemen. I am a student at Caritas Tin Mun Marden Foundation Secondary School. I have been living in Hong Kong for 3 years. Today I would like to share about my life and situation and difficulties which I have faced since I came Hong Kong. You all may know that about Yemen's situation. It's very bad. In fact, I came with my family from between the fire, war, killing, persecution, Operation Freedoms. According to the United Nations, there are many thousands of Yemeni people die by this war. In each 5 minutes, a child die. Every 5 minutes, child die. There is a biggest war. When I have come to Hong Kong with my family, we found a safe place. In that time, I could not speak English at all. It was very hard to me. I could not talk to the people. I used body language to explain what I want. My dad applied to the government to get permission for me and my siblings to go study. In few months, I got the profile to go study. I was very happy because I know that I am without education, I am nothing. The Christian Action helped me to find out the school. After I had found the school, I went to study. I did my best and hard working to learn faster. In few months, I start speak and communicate with the people. I got new friends from different nationalities. I am open-minded for all. After that, I got internship to go China, but unfortunately I cannot go there because I don't have ID card. In that time, I felt that I am not equal as human being. I felt disappointed. I felt useless, but I didn't give up. I will never give up. I am doing my best. I am studying to be an accountant and work with international organizations to help the needy people. I promise myself that I will spend part of my life to help others. And right now, I am worrying because after 1.5 years, I will have finished my school. Then I do want to complete my education in university. But we have to pay for that, and it's in Hong Kong very expensive, as you know. I will take this opportunity to appeal to the government of Hong Kong to support us and to look to our situation and improve it, to support us in the continuation of higher education and allow us to travel in the transfer of experience. We in turn will serve Hong Kong and Hong Kong people. We become part of Hong Kong, and the government has to know that my future is not in my hand. Right now my future in their hand, and I believe that Hong Kong there is humanity and freedom. Hopefully from the government will take consider in our issue and in the consideration. In conclusion, thank you for listening to me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next, we'd like to invite the lady in front here. Yes.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak here today. I am a refugee in Hong Kong, and my family has been in Hong Kong for over a decade. I have kids here. They are all going to school, and I'm very thankful for that. But there are some difficulties as parents we face. First, there is the SFAA, the Student Financial Assistance Agency. I myself applied for that in the month of June, but I received the SFA usually in the month of either April or March. And school starts in September. How am I supposed to pay for the textbooks, which are very expensive, pay for the uniforms, which are very expensive also, and for the transportation to take the children to school until I receive the SFAA assistance. Secondly, my children at school, they have what they call study tools. This year, my son's class went to South Korea, and I received the notice from school, and it was about $2,000 to pay for my child to go for 3 nights and 4 days. But I couldn't, only for the reason that my child can't leave Hong Kong, can't go out of Hong Kong. Everybody in his class went, and he didn't. When they came back, the experience they got there, whatever they did there, when they were discussing that in class with the teacher, he couldn't add to the commentary. He couldn't say anything about it. And it's not the first time, it's not the second time, it's been since they were in primary 1. And this is affecting them morally and emotionally, because they come back to me and say, you are the one who doesn't want me to go. Why are you doing this to me? So please, can you help our children in this situation, give them a document that will allow them to go for these study tools that will expire after they come back, just for that period of time, please. And thirdly, university. University in Hong Kong is self-financed. Some of us have children university age, and those kids are not going to school. After high school, the parents, we are not supposed to work. How are we supposed to pay for their university education? Please, can the government find a solution to solve that problem? It's troublesome to see your child at home with capacity of studying, but staying home, doing nothing. And they are not even allowed to do summer job. And the other thing that I would like to mention is dental care. When the children finish primary school, they are not allowed to have dental care in secondary. And even for us adults, we are not allowed to have dental care. Please, can the government put provision in place to provide us with those care, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'd like to invite Ms. Naveed Usma of the Equal Children's Rights Concern Group.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I am one of the representatives of Equal Children's Rights Group. Mr. Chairman, under the basic human rights, every child has the right to be protected, the right to live, the right for education, and the right for the basic needs. These fundamentals are the basic rights of all children, including the refugee children. With the submission, I have also attached the Declaration of the Rights of the Children, which is dated 20 November 1959 and still working. In there, the principle number 3, they said the child shall be entitled from his birth to a name and a nationality. Does the child have any self-identity who is born in Hong Kong? Like other countries, why are refugee children not giving any self-identity when they are born in Hong Kong? Refugee Hong Kong-born children have no identity. School allocations. Some schools do not accept refugee children as they find the handling process complicated. Parents are unaware of the student financial assistance scheme from SFO. School fee subsidies, school-related expenses, the textbooks, uniforms, school bags, stationeries. Parents are not able to afford their child's schooling expenses due to limited financial support. SFO takes at least 2 or 6 months to process the application. Like other permanent residence parents, refugee parents cannot pay for school expenses in advance and reimburse later. Refugee children compared themselves with other children and found themselves deprived as well as prejudice. In the principle number 4, they said the child shall enjoy the benefits of social security. All children's basic needs are the same. However, only some families are eligible to apply for baby diapers, wipes, and toiletry assistances. Parents are not able to buy baby diapers and daily hygienic amenities. Food e-cards, which is issued by ISS, can only be used in supermarkets such as Park and Shop, Taste, Fusion, which is comparatively expensive and can't fulfill the requirements of traditional and cultural food of the claimants. Small grocery shops, Chinese and non-Chinese, have the greater provision of such grocery relative to unreasonable prices. Basic living and growing needs. Refugee children are offered second-hand clothes, disregarding quality and sizes. Parents cannot buy seasonal clothes, beddings, blankets, pillows and bed sheets and basic toys for children. Child development is at risk. Children accommodation assistance, Hong Kong 750 Hong Kong dollar, whereas 1,500 Hong Kong dollar for adults. Hong Kong property prices are sky high. Families are not able to afford high rents for the premises. Mostly families need to share a unit with another family to share the rent and the utility bills. Living space is limited and unhygienic for children. Refugee children are looked down in school and in the community. Different treatments in the community. Just a small suggestions for improvement on living conditions of refugee children. Schools should be informed regarding the obstacle being faced by the refugee children. Special subsidy on books and traveling should be provided. Extra tutorial classes can be provided to refugee children to make sure that refugee children are equally grasping education, obtaining all necessary facilities in order to fulfill balanced growth. There should be provision of all necessary elements for kids, especially for infants, to grow hygienically, which at least includes diapers, wipes, etc. However, it seems like it has been totally ignored by reasonable organizations or departments. All family members should have subsidies to buy their clothes at least twice a year in accordance to winter and summer seasons. Though the financial aid is being provided, but not all the basic necessities have been considered, yet which should be offered to lead at least an ordinary life. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Usma. Next, we'd like to invite
Thank you.
Freeman.
Hello, everyone. Who am I? I'm not Pakistani. I'm not Indian. I'm not Hong Kong. Who am I? I love to play with toys, but my dad said I don't have any money. My favorite Cars movie. Then my father say I don't have any money. Money, new clothes, but I want new clothes, but I want new shoes, new toys, and I want to go to swimming also Disneyland, so Ocean Park. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope your wishes would come true. Next, we'd like to invite Shahid.
Okay, ma'am. Hi, Shahid.
My name is Shahid. I'm 9 years old. I was born in Hong Kong. I'm a student. I go to Tuen Mun Ho Shou Ki School.
Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, swimming team. I play the trumpet, piano. I love music. My parents and teachers are supporting me. My music teacher, Mr. Fong Chan Wai, always encouraged me. I've been invited to Japan for a school band competition in December, but I cannot go because of my status. I am the JPC, but I cannot be a policeman because of my status. This is what I've achieved from all my competitions. Can the government please help me? Thank you.
Thank you, Shahid. Last but not least, we'd like to invite Jeffrey Andrews of the Christian Action.
Dear officials, I was going to speak in Cantonese, but I wanted my clients to understand what we were saying because there's no interpretation for them, it seems. Again, dear officials, thank you for this precious time that you've given us. You know, our refugee children are suffering in Hong Kong. Firstly, I'd like to bring you into attention again the SFAA, which is quite ridiculous if all our refugees are prohibited from working. School starts in August, September, but they go and the money comes in March. Our organization helps about 80 to 90 children, but we are being bombarded every day with more applications. We just can't. We are not government funded. We're privately run. Another issue is also what I'm facing now is I have schools calling me and wanting to give suspension letters to their students because of their absence. And again, the absence is not on their own. It is because they have to go to sign in the immigration department. The children need to go there when they are having their interviews for their refugee status determination. Today we've brought many clients to speak. A lot more want to, but they're very scared because they feel that maybe it will affect their cases. A great gentleman here just spoke about going into university, but the likelihood is he would never. It is quite disappointing that many of them want to contribute to Hong Kong. 佢哋都係一個香港人，我哋有好多學。
They are part of Hong Kong community. We have many school principals. They have called us. They would like to enroll our children.
In our children now, they want our children because they add diversity. You ask all our refugee children who are they, and they can tell you one thing: they are all Hong Kongers. But sadly, when I see them with all their achievements and potential, it is never going to be reached. It is not their choice to be a refugee. A family in the front has been here for 13 years. They don't know when they will leave, and Hong Kong is their only home. So I do hope that every time we do try to speak to government officials, it seems like you move us from one department to another. And we're grateful today that maybe some of it can be answered, if not to us, at least to the children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeffrey. 好。
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all of you for telling us what you have encountered when you file for the claims. Now, for a young child, when born, he has to wait for a period of time before getting an identity and the basic certificates, and as a result, during the vacuum, he is not entitled to any services. And then for young children, for toddlers, for their baby formula, for their diapers, etc., again, it is lacking. And then for education, a lot has been said, and in fact there was someone from the Equality Society saying that 10 children waited for 4 or 5 months before they get admitted to a school.
知嘅，咁而家嘅制度咧係要佢揾即係自己交咗呢啲學費先，但係佢哋應該係冇收入嘅，咁呢個就構成好大嘅困難。除咗咁之外
that does present some difficulties for them. And they also have to cope with so much other expenditure. Shahid mentioned his achievements, his certificates. He's the brass band. He's going to Japan for a competition, but he can't. And the other mother mentioned some overseas activities that her kid couldn't go to. The funding for the local education is not sufficient, and medically it would be hard for them to get the waiver. The spectacles are not included. Mental health is a neglected area. For accommodation, $1,500 and $750 for adults and children. It would be hard or impossible for them to get any accommodation on that in Hong Kong. And you don't have any children-oriented consideration, and children are attached to their parents in your consideration, and there is nothing regarding the children with special needs. When the children are done with secondary education, they will lose all opportunities for further education. This is a brief summary of what we heard just earlier on. I hope that the administration will be responding to these. Mr. Wu from the Security Bureau, Mr. Billy Wu, Chairman. I'm grateful to all of the deputations here and make their representation. And let me say something about the policy first, and I defer to my colleagues to respond to the questions articulated. I'm sure you understand that in the past, the time needed for screening was a little bit too long, and hence all the problems. Basically, the government is trying very hard to screen, to do the screening in a fair manner and also in an expeditious manner. Now, some said that speed should not be the only criterion. Indeed, we're not going to measure everything in terms of speed, but the government does have the obligation to look at the overall situation in Hong Kong and the immigration situation in looking at these cases. There were some remarks that children's assessment should not be attached to their parents. In many cases that we saw in the process of examination, that you know that the applicants get publicly funded legal support. Now, when they discuss with legal representative, basically they don't advance any argument about the risks different from their parents, and they would be regarded as one single case. In the process of claims, some argue that for family or other reasons, when the children they may be born in Hong Kong, but when they return to the places of origin, if they face a particular risk, like they're subject to torture or any inhumane treatment, in the process of making claims, they can certainly make representation about that. Now, even if their applications are part of the parents' applications, they can make their representation and cite all these reasons. The Immigration Department or the Appeal Board, if they ascertain that the risks fulfill the threshold, then they can be considered independently. There was also a mention of the Refugee Convention being applicable to Hong Kong. The government has explained that having regard to the special situation in Hong Kong, our population, and also our transport hub, and also the need to maintain, we do have a liberal visa arrangement. So it is the government's decision that the Refugee Convention does not apply to Hong Kong. The claimant are in Hong Kong, and the procedure would remain the same. Some said that we should deal with these cases in a way we deal with people with Hong Kong ID card. I'm afraid under the current system we cannot do this. So in terms of overall policy, I'd like to reiterate that we would get on with these claims as quickly as possible. They do have legal support. If they are rejected by the Immigration Department, they can lodge an appeal. Now, some cases In some cases, they also lodge a judicial review after being rejected by the appeal board. That would ensure that the cases will be dealt with in a fair manner. We do not simply cite the figures about the cases being established to determine whether the process is fair or not. In terms of education and healthcare, I defer to my colleagues to elaborate. All right, thanks very much, Mr. Wu. Madam So or Mr. Leung? Ms. So Yunyi, Principal Education Officer. For primary and secondary schools, there are minors who are non-refoulement claimants. The Education Bureau would have regard to their individual circumstances and place them in schools. After application has been made, we would consult the Immigration Department. If the Immigration Department doesn't have any adverse comments, then depending on their places of residence, we will arrange for school places for them. Now, there are two ways here. The parents can make an application with the schools direct, and the schools will, after the application, sought input from the Immigration Department. Alternatively, the parents can get in touch with the Education Bureau to take the matter up from there. As regards the difficulties in getting admission, if the parents experience any difficulties, they are welcome to get in touch with the Education Bureau. Now, looking at the figures over the past 5 years, now, for those who stay in Hong Kong for a pretty long time and sought help from the Education Bureau, now, for these parents, we managed to find school places for their children successfully over the past 5 years. In terms of adaptation, there was a mention that these children might experience difficulties getting acclimatized to life in Hong Kong. Now, we do have a 6-month program. If parents do so wish, they can enroll the children in the 6-month adaptation program that would help them linguistically and offer them better transition for the children in moving into schools in Hong Kong. When the children are in primary and secondary schools, there are programs of 60 hours for them to take part in after school. Now, for kindergartens, they are privately run. Local parents or non-local parents have to apply with the kindergartens themselves, and the admission is entirely the decision of the kindergartens themselves. Now, the children, whether they are local children or non-refoulement claimants, they should be given fair treatment, and they have been their attention are drawn to the Equal Opportunities Ordinances. When they experience difficulties, again, they can seek help from the Education Bureau, and we would refer the children to kindergartens where places are available. There was also a mention of the subsidies for the children. For kindergarten and primary schools children, they can make an application for subsidies at the SFAA. We have the transport allowance and textbook allowance and internet subsidy. For kindergartens, there is a remission scheme and also the expenditure subsidy at the beginning of the term. Indeed, there are some kindergartens that will require the parents to pay some expenses up front. We do encourage the kindergartens to deal with these cases on a discretionary basis. If there are children who experience, or parents of children who experience difficulties financially, they should exercise some certain discretion. If parents have any difficulties, they are welcome to get in touch with the Education Bureau, and we will be in talks with the kindergartens to see whether flexibility can be exercised for the sake of the parents. Madam, so this is not an isolated issue. That this is something that happens to all these non-refoulement claimant children, that the parents don't have any income. It is indeed impossible for them to stump up the money in advance. So I think you should change the policy instead of asking them to approach you for you to beg them to give them discretion. Well, certainly we consider this. Okay, then Social Welfare Department, Ms. Roy. Thanks very much. For humanitarian reason, that during the stay of these claimants, if they are unable to fend for themselves, the government would provide them support in kind. Now we do have the tendering system to appoint NGOs to do this for us. At the moment, the services are provided by the ISSHK. We don't have to talk about the basic information. Why don't you respond to the issue of the allowances and not being able to pay for even the subdivided units rents, and also the baby supplies and so on, the nappies, the baby formula and so on. Yes, Chairman. At the present moment, every 2 years we would go to tender. Prior to this happening, we would work out the level for each and every item, and we would have regard to the utilization of the services, the input of the ISS, and also the prevailing situation in the community. Now, for basic necessities, we do have 4 parts: food, accommodation, transportation, and utility allowance, and also basic necessities. Now, for basic necessities, the organization would be releasing the items in kind. The babies below 3, we would have regard to the needs for nappies and the necessities for items for bathing and cleanliness and so on. We would, depending on the different age brackets, make provisions for the supplies.
So we do cover the nappies. So what happens is that for those aged below 3, what you are giving them would be 2 pieces of diapers that are made of cloth. And then for accommodation, they are living in subdivided units. So they do have difficulties if they can use cotton diapers only. They would like to have disposable diapers made of paper. Well, the ISS has environmental concerns, so they are providing reusable diapers. But then we also understand that the ISS will look at the special needs of individual families. For the views expressed today, we will go back to talk to the relevant agency. Now back to accommodation. $1,500 for adults and $750 per child. That's the accommodation allowance. The ISS has social workers to follow up on the arrangements for accommodation. They can make arrangements themselves, and if they have difficulties, they can also work through a property agent, and we do subsidize the property agent fees. If they find it difficult to get appropriate accommodation with the amount of accommodation allowance given, social workers will make recommendations, referrals, and help. We also encourage the claimants to group together and share accommodation so that their rental, or rather their rent allowance can be adequate to find a place which is suitable. Now, if they would like to change, if they have to move out in the middle of the course, and if they can't get accommodation immediately, they can go to temporary accommodation until they can find another home. What about the transportation allowance? The deputations have mentioned about the need to make extra trips to see a doctor. Well, they have a basic amount every month, and it has been paid in advance. Now, if they need to go to the immigration department, if they need any special needs other than visiting the immigration department, well, every time when they come up for an appointment, the social worker can assist them by giving an approval in advance. In other words, they can have some cash flow to meet the extra needs for that particular month. All right, how much if you talk about the cash? Our contract has been divided into 3 different regions. So depending on the relevant hospitals and clinics, as well as the immigration department officers involved, the amount would vary. I can give you the information after the meeting. Anything else? No. Ms. Lau from the LCSD. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a partnership scheme at our public libraries. NGOs and schools in Hong Kong are welcome to join. If they serve children from different nationalities, we will partner with the schools or NGOs so that we can let them have materials on loan, and we can also suggest activities for their clients, like visit to libraries, etc. What about application to get a library card? Do they encounter difficulties since they don't have an ID card? For children to get a library card, they need an identity card, or they need a parent to get it for them, or they need to have a guarantor who is an ID card holder. We understand the needs, and in fact, service organizations can make use of our scheme so that they can take out maximum 200 items of library materials, and we'll try to see what special needs they have, like the language of the materials, etc. Our librarians can talk to them and find out about their needs. In other words, they cannot go to your libraries and borrow books on their own. Is it impossible for you to arrange for library cards to be issued to the refugee children? If you want to take out a library item, you need to show us your library card. But of course, we can make arrangements. If you provide a deposit, arrangements can be made. We understand the needs of the children. Other than the partnership scheme, I understand that some of the service organizations have made arrangements to provide library materials to their children. All right, next, Dr. Rita Ho from the Department of Health. Well, the Department of Health has been providing services of different kinds, mainly by way of preventive care, with the maternity and child health centers for preschool children. We have student health service. We have got the student dental service. Yes, they're mainly targeted at local children, but then non-locals are also served. They are non-eligible persons, NEPs. Generally speaking, for NEPs, they have to pay for our service on the cost recovery principle. But then we do have a medical waiver mechanism. So anybody who has got the recognize paper or anybody who has a certificate to show that he's a refugee, then he will be waived of the fees. And then the SWD can also issue a medical waiver certificate. Holder of such a certificate that comes to our clinic will be exempted from payment altogether. Yes, the procedures may be a bit cumbersome, but then we are mainly talking about preventive care, and we need to you need to make appointments. At the time of making appointment, you don't need to produce the waiver certificate. But then at the time of consultation, once the valid document is shown, then the fees will be waived altogether. So in other words, in between, there will be time to apply for the waiver. What about dental care, and what about the eye care? Well, we have the student dental health service for primary school children. It is preventive in nature, and it is a matter of health promotion. So it's been confined to primary students. For secondary school students, even for local secondary school students, they are not covered. And then for the student health service, we do have some screening service, so that if students need to be prescribed with eyeglasses, they'll be advised to go to see an optometrist. And even for local school children, they don't get eyeglasses prescribed. So in other words, we do not cover such a need. We understand that if local school children have special needs, if they can't afford to buy the eyeglasses, I understand that the SWD can provide a special grant to cover the expenses. Thank you, Dr. Ho. Maybe in a moment, the SWD can also supplement, but I would like to invite the hospital authority to speak, and then I'll give the floor to the members. Members, if you do not mind, I would like to extend the meeting by 15 minutes up to 1 p.m. Ms. Chung or Dr. Sin? Ms. Chung, let me comment on the medical waiver. For non-refoulement claimants, they are non-local residents. So when they use the service of the Hong Kong public hospitals, they have to pay the fees applicable to the non-eligible persons. But then owing to the humanitarian ground, we do provide health service to such claimants. If they have financial difficulties, they can apply for a medical waiver. Well, Ms. Chung, I think they know it all. We just want to find out whether you can provide a waiver that lasts for 6 to 12 months instead of having to make an application every time they see a doctor. Well, for NEPs, the medical waivers are issued on a one-off basis. So every time the service is needed, then an application is required. For the one-off waiver, it means that every time they have to provide the information to us as to why, for the time being, we are not able to provide a longer-term medical waiver. This is because this is our policy covering all NEPs, and every time we will look at the family circumstances as well as other possible changes in their circumstances. And therefore, at the time, we do not have a 6-month medical waiver or medical waiver lasting for a longer time. Ms. Chong, they are here to get protection. That is, according to the official version, they are non-refoulement claimants. They can't work. They don't have an income. If you are to fit the income each and every time, it is absurd. In particular, when it comes to children, I just wondered if the HA can extend the validity of medical waivers for children so that they don't have to apply for one every time. Yes, the suggestion has been noted, but I have to say once again that the medical waiver certificates are issued on the basis of a family. Therefore, whenever a child needs a medical waiver, we have to check whether there are changes in the family circumstances, in addition to the means testing. What else? The family members will just see if there are changes to the family membership. Every time we have to look at the case of the family members. So the application isn't just for the child. We will vet the family as a whole. All right, I'll give the floor to our members. 5 minutes each. Mr. Leung Yu-chung, followed by Mr. Shiu Ka-chun. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the deputations for coming, telling us your case as well as your requests. I find it odd to see that the SWD as well as the Education Bureau for giving us an impression that they only became aware of their plight today. Does it mean that in the past you weren't aware of their difficulties? It is odd to hear that today they say that, yes, I've heard it and I'll go back to check. Now, it appears that nobody has ever talked about the situation in the past, and so the government wasn't aware of it. That's the impression I get. And then, for the response from the administration, it appears that the administration has been providing everything, but the admin has never looked at the quantity as well as the quality, whether it is adequate and whether it is up to the standard. Now, it seems that the administration knew nothing, and it only became aware of the problem today, and so it will take time to go back to reconsider the case. Now, for the administration, well, you have listened to them. You know what they are asking for. Can you not come up with something in writing? Tell us in what areas you can provide improvements so that we know how you're going to solve the problem.
Well, secondly, I've noticed a phenomenon. I wouldn't say that the departments are passing the bucks, but it seems that everything is intertwined between departments. And it is really hard for them to move ahead. Now, I think it would be far better for them to have a leading department for the processes to be cut short and the time to be cut short. Like going to the doctor, you have to look at the family circumstances to see whether there have been any changes. The SWD would also look at these. And I think everything should be clear, everything should be above board, and it would be good enough for one department to get hold of all the data and all the information without them having to file so much information with different departments. Let's say the Home Affairs Department, they can get hold of all the information and make it available to the Department of Health, Social Welfare, and so on, and they don't have to spend time asking the claimants to file so much information to individual departments. The same can be said about the Security Bureau. They have so much information, so much data. Yes, see whether we have a leading department. All right, which department is fully in the picture? Mr. Wu from the Security Bureau. Let me say something first. My colleagues are welcome to add. the Security Bureau doesn't have the claimants' data, so we cannot really make available the data. Now the claimants are facing all these problems. The Immigration Department, Social Welfare, Education Bureau, they do have communications between them. If a claimant needs assistance in certain areas, then the first department to approach would be the Social Welfare Department. And my understanding is that the ISS would make available the services like spectacles under the existing system. They cannot, they don't cover this, but if there is such a need, ISS would certainly offer assistance. Perhaps SWD can supplement. Yes, Madam Louis from the SWD. Right, spectacles, it is rather straightforward. If a child or an adult, for that matter, if they do have the need for spectacles, ISS does make available the funding on a reimbursable basis for spectacles to be made. Now, in terms of data, the SWD would do the first line of assessment. We would do the assessment on the identity of the claimant. We would check with the Immigration Department. Second, we see whether they have the resources, although they cannot work. We would ascertain whether they have any friends or any organizations that are providing them with the resources. If they need humanitarian assistance, we would refer them to the ISS, and assistance would be made available. So in terms of transmission of information, it is between the SWD and the Immigration Department. As regards a medical waiver, if their claimant status has been ascertained and if they are getting assistance from the ISS, then we need to ascertain with the Immigration Department about their status. And if they maintain the same status, there is no need for further assessment and the waiver can be issued. So this has to be applied for every time. Yes, we respect the principle of the hospital authority or NEPs, including the claimants, and they will enjoy one-off waiver. I hope that they would change the system, in particular for the sake of the children. There is no need for them to make the application time after time. If the Immigration Department finds that there are changes to the family circumstances, then they can inform the SWD, or the Immigration Department can inform the hospital authority direct. There is no need for all these formalities. The deputations also asked a question about some of the children attending a competition overseas representing the school. Would they be allowed out of Hong Kong? Would they be allowed back into Hong Kong? I mean, would the Immigration Department care to comment on this, Mr. Fong or Madam Young? Thanks very much, Chairman. The non-refoulement claimants are staying in Hong Kong for screening. Basically, they come within the USM because they don't have the status of formerly residing in Hong Kong. They are overstayers or they are illegal immigrants in status. So these people are supposed to be repatriated, but they've advanced their justification, so they come within the screening mechanism. Now, if they leave Hong Kong, then they would be part of the repatriation process. Now, there was a saying that these children wanted to leave Hong Kong. and they have to have completed their screening. And then we'll liaise with the relevant embassies for the documents to be prepared for them to be removed from Hong Kong. And if they come to Hong Kong, if they come back to Hong Kong, that would be a consideration on a case-by-case basis. So that there is no humanitarian treatment, there is no human touch, and these children do not enjoy the same right as other children. Well, Chairman, I think there should be special treatment if you apply the general principle regarding illegal immigration or overstaying. Now, these children are studying in Hong Kong. They do have special circumstances. Why can't you issue them with a temporary paper for them to leave and come back to Hong Kong? This is a humanitarian treatment. Will the government not consider this from a humanitarian point of view? Are you going to apply an across-the-board treatment without any flexibility? Mr. Wu, Chairman, we do hear your comments, but on this particular question, I think there is a very little room for maneuver. You remember a few years ago when we had the legislation on non-refoulement claims, a claimant, if he leaves Hong Kong, then his claim would be regarded as cancelled. I understand there are problems with education and social welfare and so on. There would be areas where improvement can be made. I heard what members have to say for us to do better, but these are non-refoulement claimants. We do have the system here. We don't have the system to facilitate to stay in Hong Kong on a long-term basis. Well, Chairman, I won't argue with you over adults. I'm talking about children in school. They are taking part in international competition. Now you're applying the general principle to these special situation. I mean, that's really beyond me. I'm mystified that they do need the special treatment. And you're applying this general principle to deal with them, and this is rather contradictory. You ignore the special circumstances, haven't you? Well, indeed, there should be a special arrangement. In the interest of time, I give the floor to Mr. Shuka-Chen. Thanks very much, Chairman. We are looking at this invisible issue, basically, of refugee children. If we don't bring this up, it would certainly be ignored. These people are invisible community in our midst. Unfortunately, they become visible today, and they are leaving us very frustrated. We've heard responses from the administration. I think we're here in vain. I mean, you spend so much time making your points, but I think you've done so in vain, because none of the departments heard what you said. They don't have any hearing problem, but it's just that they're not doing anything to change it. All the departments are repeating this routine mechanism. They're not going to change anything at all. I think it's a waste of time for us to talk about it. Let me ask the question more precisely. A few moments ago, there was a mention of detention camp. Detention camp, closed camp. I hope that the Security Bureau would reiterate that this is not your idea at the moment. In the near future, you're not going to introduce the closed detention camps to handle the refugees and the refugee children. Can you confirm this? Second, there was a mention of separating the applications between the parents and the children. Now you are using this family as a unit. We were very critical. We've been very critical of that at different meetings. Now, you said you would consider the family changes. What changes can there be? They're not supposed to work. The only change would be for the parent, one of the parents to pass away, or one of the parents to leave Hong Kong. What other changes can you anticipate? I think it's a waste of resources for you to go into this. The chairman kept asking why do they have to make an application every time? Now, as LegCo members, when we go to the housing authority car parks, we don't have to make an application every time. We have the names of the councillors made available to them, and we can park in the government car parks without having to make an application every time. Now, we're talking about a few hundred children, not millions and millions of them. Why can't you do it? Third, ISS. It would be so easy for the government, it's so easy to be officials, to shove everything to the lap of the ISS. Everything is the ISS business. Everything is done by the ISS, and the SWT, you said that you have the tender exercise every 2 years. Have we always had ISS? You may have the tendering exercise, but did you end up with ISS every time? How many years has the ISS been there for? Can you supplement the information? ISS is the shield for you to hide behind, and the ISS people have become the pawns. Have you given a lot of money to the ISS as administrative cost for them to become this marvelous shield for you? Now, there was a mention of humanitarian assistance, food, accommodation, transportation, daily necessities. That the two nappies. You said you have environmental consideration. That they're living in these subdivided units with a dozen or so square feet. No windows, but no nothing, and we all want green living. We want to have better environment. Is this an excuse that you have? Now, what about in basic necessities? Can you come up with a list for us about the daily necessities? What do they include? And are they up to the present day level? You can't tell me that this is the list that drawn up 5-10 years ago and you're still sticking to this. I really want to find out what are there in the list of daily necessities. Thank you.
I'm afraid we need to extend the meeting by another 10 minutes. Would it be agreeable, public officers? All right, let's invite answers from the Security Bureau. First of all, concerning the question about the detained camp, among the points made by Mr. Xu. Well, it wasn't an idea from the administration. Well, in fact, some citizens suggested that perhaps we should consider whether we should set up a detention camp or closed camp. We understand that we need to look at all sorts of implications, legal implications, land, as well as manpower implications. For the time being, we haven't. Sorry, are you carrying out a study? Is it something studied by you? So today you haven't rejected the idea. So you are in the process of studying the matter. You are consulting the views of the public. So it must be a very serious matter. I want to find out from this side of the room how many of them have heard of this position. We have always been updating the security panel on the unified screening mechanism. We have also provided such information to the LegCo. Well, I think you must have heard from our members that we hope that you will say once and for all and directly that you are going to abandon the idea. We'll go back to consider. For the medical waiver, hospital authority, are you going to reconsider your policy. Well, the hospital authority has been put on the spotlight. Others are saying that they want to respect the HA's policy. Well, if the HA is willing to change, then others will follow the example and a lot can be changed. Ms. Chung. Well, today members have made suggestions to us. I just want to say that for the medical waiver mechanism, though I have made the point many times, first of all, it has to be granted on the basis of a family. Second, the waiver will be granted on a one-off basis. Today, we have been asked to see if we can make a special case for children. Now, every time we need to verify the identity. So if the Immigration Department and the Social Welfare Department can sort of fine-tune the arrangements together with the hospital authority, well, if that is the idea, I think we will go back to consider whether there is room to sort of do it. Now, we have to check whether there will be implications on the case of other non-eligible persons. So you have given an undertaking that the three organizations will have a meeting. I think it is absurd for the hospital authority to bear the brunt. Well, it will be difficult for us to take the initiative to do this on our own. What about the SWD? Is it possible, or the Immigration Department, is it possible to improve the mechanism? Mr. Feng. Well, the Immigration Department's role is that of a support role when it comes to humanitarian treatment, like going to school or getting health care. So other departments will approach us to verify the status of the claimants. Now, the claimants' data is mainly for us to process their claims. If other departments need our support, we will play the supporting role. And as the hospital authority representative has said, we'll try to see if we should adjust our role. Well, I think it's better if you can take the initiative. That is, when such families have any changes in their sort of circumstances, then you take the initiative and try to alert the other departments, and then they can make changes, so that we can have medical waivers lasting for half a year or a year, and then they can get medical attention immediately other than having to get it every time. Ms. Lui, SWD. Well, for the suggestions of requests made today, they involve the operational arrangements of the ISS, like the specific items to be covered by the basic necessity needs. Now, if a claimant has views concerning the ISS arrangements, or if they do not agree with the ISS decision, is there a channel for them to voice their opinions? Yes, they can. They can reflect the problem to us directly. We are the funder, and we can review the matter together with the ISS. So the funder, the SWD has become the funder. You regard it as a light matter. In fact, it is your duty. So for how long have you become the funder? So you're sharing the responsibility. You are leaving the responsibility with the ISS. Understand that the contract is awarded once every 2 years. So for how long has ISS been put into such a grief situation? Let me clarify what I have said and the diction I used. The SWD provides the funding. The ISS is responsible for the execution. So we're responsible for drawing up the overall objectives. The ISS is responsible for implementing the system for us. So when it comes to the actual operation, we need to talk to the ISS as to the policies as well as the level of services. They are our decisions. To answer Mr. Shiu's question, that is, since when has the ISS been helping us? In the year 2006, as a result of a restricted tender exercise, starting from April 2006, the ISS has been providing the service on our behalf. We have had 9 rounds of tender calling, among which other organizations have also submitted a bid. But then according to our procurement policies, for so many years, the ISS has been awarded the tender. Therefore, since 2006, it has always been the ISS providing the humanitarian assistance. So they won the tender 9 times. I don't know whether we should sort of congratulate them or congratulate you. They have become the sole supplier. I think I would like to have a last round of comments from the deputations. I think you will only have a minute each. I can't give you too much time. Who would like to speak? 4 or 5, 6? So I draw a line there. 6 would be the maximum. Ms. Lee. I would like to thank Mr. Wu from the SB for his explanation. I just want to say that many claimants won't know the technicalities about the laws governing the non-refoulement claims. SB, I think you are training up the duty lawyers. Is it possible for you to provide more legal training covering children claimants? I think by fine-tuning your work, you can reduce the number of cases going to the TCAB, the Torture Claims Appeal Board. In this way, you can clear the backlog. So perhaps you should enhance the training for your frontline officers as well as lawyers. And I hope that they will be allowed to have a separate claim. Health in action. Yes, just a quick word. For the medical waiver, a lot has been said. That is whether it should be one-off or whether it should be a long-term waiver. It appears that the administration is saying that there will be lots of difficulties. For local citizens, if you lack the means, then you can get a medical waiver. Low-income families can get a 6-month medical waiver. Their family circumstances may change, but how come that they can be given a 6-month medical waiver? And then for eyeglasses, the SWD has said that the claimants can apply for the subsidy. We are glad to hear that. In the past, the ISS frontline officers told us that it was not allowed. So we will take this message to our clients. And then for dental care, the SWD has said that discretion can be exercised.
Thank you. I want to address my question to 2 departments, which I heard right now, the public library one and the social welfare department. So for the public library department, what I heard you say is they need to have a guarantor, or they need to have pay some deposit. How can you ask people who are not having enough money for deposit just to borrow books? Secondly, can't you place trust on these refugees to actually have the opportunity to borrow books rather than simply saying, rather than they have to go through so much trouble just to borrow books? And secondly, to the official who said that right now we're only giving $750 for a child and $1,500 for an adult for accommodation. Do you really think that's enough? Try imagining yourself in their position before saying that, okay, we're already doing enough. Because what I can see right now the government is doing is they're trying to reduce the amount of effort they need to do in helping these people rather than actually addressing the problem. So highly suggest you all to think from their feet and their situation instead of just listing out facts that we all know in this room. Thank you.
Next, Azan Marwa.
Thank you, Chair. There doesn't seem to be any dispute that what the government is obliged to do is provide equality and full welfare protection for all children. At the same time, it doesn't appear disputed by the members of the administration here that equality is not being given to all of these children. This is exemplified by what was said about the Social Welfare Department's provision for housing, where they suggested that claimants should group together so that they will have adequate funding for their housing. This demonstrates that funding is not adequate. At the same time, there appears to be passing the buck and a recognition by all those present that there is no overarching authority responsible for ensuring full protection for the children's welfare. There's been a lot of blaming against ISS, but ISS are not here. There's been a lot of suggestion that, oh, we are waiting for responses from the Immigration Department. Well, that problem can only be solved when there's an independent Children's Commission to look at these problems in depth, not allowing departments merely to pass the problems between themselves.
Thank you. 跟住請 Isabella。
你好，主席。我首先想回應返保安局嘅同事，佢哋講嘅關於。
Thank you, Chair. Last July, together with two other colleagues, we have asked the Hong Kong Youth to carry out an opinion poll, and 1,200 people were interviewed. We tried to find out about the extent of support for a closed camp. 60% of the respondents would like the human trafficking offenders to be arrested and punished. Less than 20% are in support of a closed camp. Have you read our findings? And have you ever considered the findings of our survey? And then for the SWD, I understand that you are helping the CSSA recipients. Now, you try to apply the same rules of the CSSA to the claimants, but they don't have work. Do you expect them to go around to get a loan from their friends or the NGOs? If they know nobody here, then does it mean that they have to sleep rough? So you can't apply the same treatment of CSSA recipients to this group of people. Thank you.
頭先聽過咧，就教育部咧就會幫我哋啲家長咧就會揾俾佢哋嘅。
Well, the ISS, they have to look for their own kindergartens. If this is a fact, we respect the department. Why is it the ISS never bothered coming to take questions? So we invited them, they never bothered. Yes, indeed, we have invited ISS, they chose not to come here. That's all the time we have for today. My thanks to all government officials, hospital authority, they're prepared to stay behind. We've heard the claimants and the refugee children who share with us their experience. And we were running out of time today, beg your pardon. From the administration's response, they heard something, but there are many things for which they still maintain their position. I hope that after today's session, in terms of medical, education, housing, accommodation, healthy development of the refugee children, I hope that the administration has taken into account their voices, and I hope that the members of the public will also heard what they had to say. I do hope that the administration will have seize an opportunity to have a dialogue with the community, and through the dialogue we can resolve all these problems. Children, wherever they're born, whatever their nationality, their status, we hope that they can be well treated while they are in Hong Kong. We should treat them the way we treat any other children in Hong Kong. I hope that they will be able to grow up happily in Hong Kong. After today's session, I do hope that the administration, the officials, would carefully consider this. If there are aspirations from the community, I hope that there would be an opportunity for further communication. That's it for today. Thank you all very much for coming.